what are people's role in a web that's just dominated by content that has been created by AI, shared, distributed, engaged with by AI? Doesn't sound like an interesting place. Are we just like consumers now? I want to get offline from that web.
Welcome to Canada Now. I'm Ashley Smith, and every week we dig into the bold ideas, real stories, and fresh perspectives shaping Canada's future. Let's get into it. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Canada Now, where we explore how Canadian founders, operators, and leaders are building what's next. I'm your host, Ashley Smith. My guest today is William Johnson, a senior strategy, operations, and communications leader who spent the last 2 decades working at the intersection of technology, media, government, and community. William is currently Vice President of Strategy and Operations at Overstory Media Group, where he leads external engagement, partnerships, and growth across a national portfolio of publications and events. He's also the founder of Vancouver Tech Journal, which he built into one of the most trusted voices in Vancouver's tech ecosystem, and which helped lay the groundwork for a broader network of community-driven tech publications, including the Victoria and Calgary Tech Journals, now part of Overstory's portfolio. Earlier in his career, William held senior roles with organizations like Innovate BC, supporting the province's innovation ecosystem and helping bridge public institutions, industry, and community. He's built an impressive career and strong reputation telling stories about Canadian startups, entrepreneurs, and digital culture, with bylines in outlets like the Globe and Mail, Maclean's, Billboard, and the Georgia Straight. And alongside all of that, he's a bit of a foodie, moonlighting as a food writer and profiling chefs and restaurants around Vancouver, blending his love of storytelling with a passion for food and drink culture. William, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to Canada Now.
Thanks so much for having me.
I really appreciate your time. I know you're busy. I know you even have an event to get to today, but I'm really excited to dive into a few different themes with you. And I think I'd really like to just start at where we're at today. We're at the beginning of 2026. There's a lot going on. I've seen on your LinkedIn profile, like a number of events going on that you're supporting and talking about. And I think where I'd like to start is really at where you're seeing sort of the tech landscape in Vancouver today versus where you maybe would have seen it a half decade ago.
I'd say it's a really exciting time, but at the same time, it's really precarious. People are still trying to figure out what's going on. When I moved to Vancouver in 2015, actually, so I'm just about at 11 years, it was really exciting. I felt like the city was just starting to get an ecosystem. There had been a lot of like well-known companies that had been built here, but I think that was sort of the beginning of a lot of events and people coming out and doing meetups and that sort of things. And one of the very first events I went to was called Tech Fest. And it was at the Vogue Theater, and it was hundreds of people. And I remember the CEO of a company called Mobify, John Boxall, giving a speech about why you should come work at Mobify. Hundreds of people. It was really, really exciting. And I was like, oh, wow, like what a cool community to move into and join. And I came from Ottawa, right? And there was a bit of that, but not that much. Obviously, Mobify would go on to be acquired by Salesforce, right? Which has a big presence in the city. But I thought like the ecosystem, a lot of people hate that word, but I think it's a really interesting word because it kind of does reflect these different interdependent parts that sort of rely on each other to grow organically, right? So I think it is an ecosystem. The ecosystem I felt like was just getting started, even though there have been many successful tech companies. And between that year and this year, like a lot has happened. So we had some, breakout tech stars. So companies like, Broadband TV, Slack, Hootsuite. And I think the really interesting thing is the different trajectories that these companies have gone on and how that sort of maybe is like a microcosm of the precarious nature of the ecosystem. So Hootsuite was a tech software darling. Actually, they're going through a lot right now, which I'm sure you know about and your listeners know about. Then you had a company like Slack that was founded here by a guy named Stuart Butterfield, went on to be acquired by Salesforce for almost $30 billion, right? So that's a significant exit. Then you had a company like Broadband TV, founded by Shahrzad Rafati, went public. There was a time when, she was saying this is $1 billion company. It went public, its stock dropped by like 95%, then they went private, right? Maybe we don't like public markets anymore. And there are many stories like that where we've had companies that were really popular really successful, but then, circumstance change and they've sort of got to change track. And I think the biggest example of that, you said like the last half decade, and I went a bit further back, but if we're just looking at the last half decade, we need to start in 2020,
Mm-hmm.
which is COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a pretty remarkable year for technology companies, startups, global markets, stocks catered. So you remember. And what were you doing then, actually? What were you doing in 2020?
In 2020, I was leaning in hard to three things.
Mm-hmm.
Like the emergence of TikTok and digital streaming, like live streaming. So as a realtor at the time, I was live streaming as a way to connect, properties and real estate with consumers. And then I guess that was the main one. So TikTok, live streaming, and then more into 2021, we started talking blockchain.
Yes. Okay. So
So
one of the things that the whole world became obsessed with or particularly interested in 2020, 2021, but among other things, because interest rates were basically zero. And I would say, I guess the government was doing a lot of quantitative easing. And it seemed like money was free for companies, for investors, for everyone. And so whenever I was reporting on technology in 2021, there was basically a 12-month period where there was a new unicorn, billion-dollar startup, literally every month. Like there were some months where I would wake up on a Tuesday and I would just wait to get a press release in my inbox from a different PR firm saying, "Oh, so and so's raised this massive round. Now they're a unicorn." So you companies like Dapper Labs, Nexi, Accelera ended up going public. They raised $555 million on the Nasdaq. Totally crazy. You had Galvanize was sold for $1 billion to a New York company called Diligent, right? So this went on and on. There was Blockstream out of Victoria. You had Layer Zero Labs. So it went on and on and on. Actually, Vizier, they're just like popping into my head now. And it went on and on. Oh, and Semios, they were agritech firm. So there was like literally every few weeks, it felt like another company was raising a significant round and these crazy high valuations. Obviously, that did not last, right? And so these are hardworking entrepreneurs. They were building real businesses. And what you had was a lot of investors just needing to put money somewhere, right? And expectations were probably a little too high for some of these businesses. And that was sort of the acceleration of the tech ecosystem. I think a lot of companies, even if they sort of didn't live up to their valuations, helped put Vancouver on the map.
yeah.
And a lot of other organizations started like taking notice, like, oh, interesting, what's going on in Vancouver? It's really fascinating. Who's this company? Who's Accelera, which built some biotech, right? That's helping to combat COVID. Like that's actually really interesting and useful, right? They were valued at like $5 to $8 billion. Now they're an $800 million company, right? So valuations have changed, but there was that period that I think really put the ecosystem on the map. I feel like right now the ecosystem is in the pragmatic reset still, where we're investors and founders are sort of feeling out like, who are we? What does it mean to be a really compelling technology company? What does it mean? Like, there's a term called like lifestyle businesses. It's a good business, but is it going to give you like venture scale returns? Is that a good or is that a bad thing? I think those are a lot of the questions that are being asked right now in the ecosystem. And then the other thing is around, I mean, I don't want to like spend a whole podcast talking about AI because like that happens a lot, and I'm probably going to have to do that later this evening.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also really impacted how founders locally are thinking about building companies and how they're scaling, right? So really prominent local company called Clue, run by Jason Smith. Last year they laid off a significant portion of their team, and he said, candidly, we have to reset how we are thinking about this business at all because of AI and the different tools and what's necessary to scale and grow. And I think a lot of founders right now are able to do a lot more before they're going to raise significant sums of capital. And I don't think that's a bad thing.
It definitely, I would imagine, shifts how builders and founders think about just getting out the door. And I'm wondering, I can't help but think about demographic shifts and age in particular and how that plays into some of these things. So for people who came of age during this, let's call it a hype cycle for lack of a better term, and all they're seeing are these kinds of big valuations, big exits. And now in many ways it's harder, but it's also easier to ideate. It's easier to like put your idea into, something tangible. How have you seen that, or have you seen a demographic shift? So like when you're talking to people or you're at these real life events, have you seen an emergence of like this next generation, and how has that changed the way founders are thinking about, what they're going to commit their time to?
What I have seen just at a community level, and so I'm 37. I feel like you forget once you're in your late 30s. Pretty sure I'm 37, turning 38.
I'll say I'm 37 too.
I've seen a lot of younger entrepreneurs who are building businesses and experimenting more because they have the tools to do so. But also they are very specifically like publicly rejecting like the ways that I'm not even that old, right? But the ways that some of these earlier eras of founders that I've been talking about have been building businesses and building community. And even like simple things like, like we're not necessarily going to go down to the valley and try and raise money right away. Like we don't have to do that necessarily. Like we think we can do it right here in Canada. That's one change. Other like little things are honestly just like, we don't run events with panel speakers since that's not how people want to engage anymore, which I can appreciate that. So I have seen a different approach from a lot of the younger entrepreneurs in the city. But again, another big thing that comes up in conversations with me and other founders is like what types of businesses are actually good businesses. And if you look at CVCA data, so the Canadian Venture Capital and Private Equity Association, they've been sort of like ringing this five alarm alarm like over the last few years around pre-seed and like early stage investing. And it's like, oh, early stage investing dollars are dropping. And it's like, maybe because there are fewer investable companies, right? Or fewer companies that are going to deliver venture scales, or fewer companies that are worth the risk, especially right now when you can like tell software like AI tools, hey, I want to build something that does this and it's going to build it for you in 10 minutes, right? Like you think about a company, and I'm going to get in trouble, but it's fine, right? You think about a company like Thinkific, right, which went public at $1 billion valuation, the stock's down 95%. You could probably build like Thinkific in a day now. Like you probably could build that software in a day now with the tools that exist. So if you're an investor investing in software, like I think it's like really hard. Like why are you going to commit to this? Like product development is essentially free, it feels like right now. So when we're thinking about like, less investing at the early stage, like there's a reason why, right? I think there are fewer investable companies.
That has me wondering about a few different things. I know, so you've kind of laid the foundation as to the VC mindset shift a little bit. But I know you're also talking to a lot of people in VC right now. And I'm wondering if they have a general sense just about the landscape in general. Like, are they solely focused on these really high risk emerging tech ventures, or are they thinking about some of these more solving a real world problem? Like, what is in their minds? What are they looking for? What do they want?
So I can only speak to the investors that I'm talking to. So just this disclaimer to listeners.
Yeah, and not financial advice.
Yeah. Not financial advice, and only the investors that I'm talking to, right? Which is a small percentage of, VCs around the world. It's funny, I'm seeing two things, and I'm seeing this in investing, but I'm also seeing it in consumer brands and branding, and like maybe the whole economy, which is you're either at like the very, very early stages and you're like high risk tolerance and you're writing really like small checks, and you're okay with the high risk tolerance, and this might not be a big thing, but it also might be. Or you're like really late stage and you can like only write massive checks, and you're skipping a lot of deals because you need to deploy so much capital and the outcomes need to be like that much bigger. And so there's like a gap in the middle where there's a lot of companies that are scaling. They got pretty good growth, but it's just not fast enough growth for like a later stage fund to really take a long, hard look at. How that contrasts is that like 4 years ago, this would have been like, this is a good business. And now it's like, it's not big enough. It's not quite big enough for us to deploy capital and have a measurable outcome that's going to return money to our LPs. So I'm seeing like there's this divergence. You're early stage in like into the risky stuff and you're okay with that, or you're looking to deploy like big checks, and there's a lot of companies that are doing well, but they're just not doing well enough, and so they're getting overlooked, and they're going to have a hard time raising their next round. And we'll see what that looks like. I think the good outcome out of all of this is that, I sort of said earlier, I think we're in this like sort of pragmatic reset where founders are thinking long and hard before they're even taking outside capital.
Yeah.
Right. And unfortunately, again, with the tools that are available, they can do a lot more with fewer people.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the themes I've picked up with some of the founders I've spoken with on this show is kind of the Canadian sort of more cautious approach to business building, bootstrapping, working, really thinking about cash flow versus like build at all costs or grow at all costs. And so maybe some of that is driven by the types of builders Canadians can be, but it also sounds like there's a major market component to this too.
I'll also add investors. Again, lots of my friends are investors, so I'm not gonna talk shit about them. They're kind of like doctors. Like you go to one, you go to 10, you're gonna get a different answer from all of them. And you're like, well, right. So the solution might be don't talk to them.
Yeah. I am wondering, and this has just come to me now as we're speaking, but this concept of anyone can kind of build anything now if they really wanted to spend the time to figure it out.
Yeah.
And so that seems to put a lot more value on this idea of a moat. Like, are builders, are entrepreneurs thinking about how to have a moat when they're building and investing their time and money into developing something? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've definitely asked founders about this at different events and panel things. Because again, a lot of the founders I'm talking to, like quite frankly, they're just building software businesses. And like we've all established, AI can build software tools in an afternoon now. So what does a moat look like? Like there are a few things that investors have told me. Again, I'm not building a software business. I use software, but I'm not building one. Like actual like proprietary data, very, very important still, right? Like even if we're talking about LLMs and different AI tools, use machine learning, like all of that relies on data. And so if you actually have proprietary data that no one else has, like that is a real moat. You can actually get somewhere with that. That's really powerful. So that's like one key thing. And then my favorite one that comes up is honestly, it's like, it sounds funny, but really it's just like speed.
Yeah.
If you can build and you can learn and you can iterate faster than everyone else, that goes a long, long way. And again, that's what I've been hearing. Again, because if you look at software, anyone can build it. You can build. I can build software in an afternoon. So again, it's like proprietary data, and then like speed to pivot and iterate and build more. And then obviously, again, I'm super bullish on this, and we could have a whole conversation around offline, interaction and connections and relationships with people. I think that's really significant. And I think, tech startups, media, services businesses, consumer brands, I think like the most powerful thing like right now, and it has been for a long time, but that's just going to accelerate, is what are your offline interactions with organizations and people and consumers and stakeholders? What does that look like? I think that's where you can really differentiate yourself.
Yeah. That speaks, I think, a bit to distribution too. Like if you have something and you're able to get it in front of users, that matters. I'm curious, I do want to unpack a little bit more to your point about the convening, like this effort to convene and do it in a way that's not performative, maybe like to have purposeful interaction and engagement, build real meaningful relationships, and how to do that, like how to leave a strong impression when you're at an in-person event without feeling like you're putting on some sort of mask or whatever. Like, how are you seeing folks showing up today and having really purposeful interactions and things that build towards some sort of value besides the fun they might have or the drink they might get?
Again, I spend a lot of time in rooms with people, and I'm really passionate about that. And I've seen a few things evolve just with my work with the Tech Journal, and I have a few other organizations that I run and do work for. And the Tech Journal has always been able to put 120 people in a room to talk about a topic that they're passionate about, right? So the event I'm headed to later this evening, 120 people. And to be quite honest, like it's too many people, right? Like I'm going to go there and there's, all these people, and like you can't really have a meaningful conversation with all of them. Everyone's interrupting each other's talks. And so I actually set up there's like an event within the event in another private room that can only fit 10 people. So you can pull someone aside, actually have a meaningful conversation. And what we found with the Tech Journal is that these big events are fun. It's like very broad. But the real connection and the real value is made whenever we do these 12-person events with just 12 founders or CEOs, and they get to spend, 90 minutes around a table actually asking each other, hey, like, what are you actually struggling with right now? Is there someone at this table who could help you with that?
Yeah.
And so just over the last year, we've like doubled down on those style events. And the founders that are going are telling us like, these are really valuable. In fact, like last night, the Georgia Strait, one of the brands Overstory owns, we hosted an event at a restaurant in a private room with 15 restaurant owners to do that very thing, just to talk about, what are you struggling with building your business right now? There's probably peers in the room who can actually relate. And a lot of them said, oh, we've never even done this before, which is nuts. And again, for us, it's about like, building community, building relationship with these organizations. And same with the Tech Journal, and we do that with CEOs, about building community and building relationships with those organizations. And it is a very good differentiator for us because you can obviously go read tech news anywhere on the internet, right? So with the Tech Journal, like we're really deliberate about like, okay, well, how are we different? Well, we're different because we're actually we're bringing this audience and we're changing this audience from an audience to a community. And that's how we have this like long-term relationship with our readers.
So for our listeners or watchers or viewers, for folks who are wanting to become more engaged, that they're hearing what you're saying and it resonates and they want to find what are these opportunities? How can I get in these rooms? Where should they start? I'll digress a little because I think what I'm hearing you say is these micro events are really interesting. So there's almost an opportunity for people to initiate their own micro events for sure, at the risk of sounding like a little elite. Like if folks want to be figuring out how can they get on your invite list, like how does that work? And how could you encourage people who've maybe never been invited to signal that they're interested and that they're worth talking to?
Mm-hmm. So there's a few things. There's like very practical things, which is like we do free events all the time. Come to a free event, come say hi to me, come go say hi to someone else and just say what you want to do. Like I blog all the time, which maybe you see my blog, right? And one of the things I always say is, if you want to meet your people, you just need to like speak your language. So you need to be out in the world talking about the things that you're passionate about. And inevitably, you're going to interact with the people who care about the same things as you, right? So that can be done on LinkedIn. That can be done on Twitter. We were just talking about this like before we came online. That could be at an event in the Q&A. On a very practical level, I always tell someone, if you come to one of our events, there's always Q&A. If you get the mic during a Q&A, people jump into their question. Big mistake. Take a moment to say, I'm Ashley Smith, right? I run a podcast called Canada Now. Here are the types of people that we want to talk to. So if anyone is in the room that fits this profile, please come say hi to me.
Yeah.
Now here's my question, right? But you've just got to basically do a pitch in front of 120 people.
Yeah.
And I see that opportunity wasted by so many people. It's like a very practical thing. The other thing is, if you want to be in a community like this, I actually think you just need to do the interesting work, right? So there's a really good line. I don't know where it came from. I didn't come up with it, which was people go to an event, they want to network and work the room. The other way to network is to do interesting work in public and a network will form around you. That's the other way I think about it. So anyone who's thinking, oh, I need to be invited to be part of this cool community. It's like, well, no, actually, you can actually be the one who makes the community and invites other people into it.
I hope folks are taking that away, especially the younger people who I think it has been an interesting time. Like you mentioned, obviously, 2020 happened, COVID happened. A lot of people in their formative years maybe weren't as exposed to some of these sort of real life sort of things that we feel are pretty normal because we had the opportunity to, experience them in a real way. And so I do think that there's a little bit of encouragement that might be needed for some of these younger people to just get out there, go to things on your own. Like you don't need a friend to go with you.
Yeah, I could spend an hour just talking about, again, we're online, we're doing a video podcast, and I love video podcasts because you can actually see the people talking, and I think it's really compelling. At the same time, I think the web generally is increasingly becoming irrelevant as a place to like connect with people. And again, I could spend hours on this. We don't need to get into that, but I just wanted to say like, I'm personally doubling down on in-person events, in-person communities. And I think that brands and companies would be missing out if they weren't like looking at that.
Right. But just to unpack that a little, I think it's worth saying it out loud. I think what you're saying is when you're online and you come across content, you don't necessarily know if the person behind that content is even a real person. Is that where you're going with this?
Yeah. Well, and increasingly it's probably not, right? And there's a book called The Long Game. It's written by Chris Anderson, founder of Wired, many years ago, maybe like 20 years ago. I read it. And he talks about content and media. And there's sort of like 3 shifts he talks about. And one he talks about is the democratization of production. So once upon a time, there was like 3 news stations. Only very few people could produce the news and share content, right? But then eventually, cameras got cheaper. Like people had cameras in their home. You had a video camera. You could take photos. Creating media became a bit easier for consumers, right? And then like personal computers. We all got personal computers eventually. So, I can like write a book. I can do this myself. Really, really cool. But you still had to get it to people, right? So the distribution part, right? Eventually, the web plus social tools made it so anyone could share content, social media, right? So we had again, this is not my thinking, this is someone else's. The democratization of production, the democratization of distribution. So these two shifts. But then the other problem to solve was like, well, how do I find out all the other people who love fried chicken? Just as something I'm passionate about, right? Right? How do they find me, right? So these social media tools and websites, right, got very good at algorithms to say, you like this, we're going to put this in front of you, right? So these three shifts he talks about, and this might be 20 years ago when this book came out. I forget now. But the interesting thing there was that at the very least, humans were responsible for the creation. And so for a long time, humans had a monopoly on creativity and actually making the content. But where we are now is that actually humans don't have a monopoly on creativity or making stuff anymore. AI tools can do it. This is my fear. Now it's like, oh, okay, so AI is creating the content, AI is distributing the content, AI is connecting the content with viewers, which could be people or could be AI. We don't even know, right? So it's like, what is the web becoming right now? It doesn't sound like a place, or like, actually, the bigger question is, what are people's role in a web that's just dominated by content that has been created by AI, shared, distributed, engaged with by AI? Doesn't sound like an interesting place. Are we just like consumers now? I want to get offline from that web.
Yeah, it is funny. The idea of even viewership is really just bots. And so the whole scheme really seems to be this: how much money can you get to get into in front of as many bots as possible? And how can you trick people into thinking that was people?
Right. You've heard of the dead internet theory.
Yeah.
Sure, this has come online. And that was a theory. Now I'm like, it's kind of there already, right?
Yeah.
The internet's kind of just people engaging, or not people, sorry, bots engaging with each other.
Yeah. You helped me with the perfect segue, though, because I do want to talk about the shift in media and the media landscape. I feel like you've lived different ends of that spectrum, having created and founded something that was yours, and then being able to bridge the nationwide distribution and more corporate and all of that. I'm just going to color this a little bit with, I'm thinking about from a Canadian context also, where news in particular is weird because people get most of their content from social media, but in Canada, we don't get a lot of our news through social media. So it's an interesting time. I think it's an interesting time for media folks. So I want you to speak to that. But also an interesting time for maybe there's an opportunity for more what feels like human media and human crafted media. If you could just take that topic in general and speak to where you see the media landscape right now. And I'm hoping to kind of keep it within the Canadian context if possible.
Well, I mean, Overstory, where I work, is an interesting example, which kind of ties to what I was talking about, investment. And actually, I didn't even finish my thought on that, but I was talking about investing being like really early stage, really risky, and then like really large funds deploying a lot of capital, right? And I didn't even get into my thoughts on brands, which was everyone's going to Dollarama and Costco, and then there's luxury brands. And it's like, what is in the middle? Like, are there any aspirational middle-class brands anymore? Does anyone believe in aspirational brands anymore? Or are we just like trying to pay for stuff?
Yeah.
Right? Or we don't need to worry about price tags, and so we're buying Louis Vuitton, right? And so I feel like media is in the same boat where you're either the New York Times, right? And there's can only be one of them. So I know you said Canada, but we got to use them as an example. Sorry, our equivalent is the Globe and Mail, which makes money, right? There were other sort of marquee brands. Again, sorry, I have to mention the US. The Washington Post just cut 300 people, right? But then there is many, many, many small community brands. And I think those brands can make it work if they stay focused on their audiences, basically, right? And so Overstory, when it started, like, you can read this online. I was in a different role when Overstory started. Overstory started, it had a really ambitious plan, 250 journalists, like 50 publications, which is nuts. But anyway, that's like a whole nother discussion. Overstory had, I want to say maybe 65 employees. Now we're only 25 employees, right? But we're a really tight ship and we're really focused. And I think that the small media organizations in Canada can survive if they stay really focused on their niche communities, right? So we have the Georgia Straits. We're lucky it has a 50-plus year legacy, really trusted brand in arts and culture and entertainment reporting and civic reporting. The Tech Journal, which was, I started, and Overstory acqui-hired me. That's how I ended up at Overstory the first time. I left and then I came back. But again, very, very niche. We weren't trying to be everything to everyone. We were going to write more about tech news than anyone else in the city. That was the only thing that I wanted to do. The most complete coverage of Vancouver tech news. And we succeeded there. Then we have the equivalent of the Georgia Strait in Halifax called the Coast. And we have the Calgary Citizen. It's just everything Calgary, right? And then we have a publication, I won't go through them all, but one where I want to mention is the Fraser Valley Current, right? Fraser Valley is Chilliwack, Abbotsford, Hope, Mission. And we are like laser focused on serving these communities. And that's why they can work. Because we're not trying to be everything to everyone. And we're not like a massive organization, like a massive business. But we can make it work because we just stay focused. And when I think about the media in Canada, there's a bit of space for the Globe and Mail. And obviously there's like CBC, CTV. These are big legacy, mainstream like media brands. And then I think that smaller new startups, if you will, can make it work if they just stay focused and disciplined. Like we don't have a lot of people. We don't have a lot of editorial staff. We have very few sales staff, but we stay focused and disciplined, and we use new tools that are coming out to help us operate like we're double the size that we are.
Mm-hmm.
And I've talked about this before already, like the Tech Journal makes its money, despite it being a news organization, it primarily makes money through events.
Right.
And so there are actually, ironically, some lessons that small media organizations can learn from the big ones, right? Like the New York Times makes money because it has a really good cooking app. I mean,
yeah.
Again, not just that, but my point is they monetize in two different revenue streams.
Yeah, and their games, it drives subscribers, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. And so we have to take some of those lessons, which is, okay, we want to invest in high quality journalism, but it doesn't mean that is our only revenue source, right? Though we're very lucky. We have thousands of readers who do pay to receive our publications, plus ad dollars, plus events, plus affiliate marketing, plus passive ad revenue on websites. So there's multiple revenue streams. And I think that's the key thing. The other thing in Canada, which, I'll get in trouble for saying this, I don't necessarily agree with, even though I benefit from it, is that the government is a big subsidizer of media in Canada. Mm-hmm. Right? So you go on your Instagram right now and you can't read any news organizations because Google's paying the Canadian government $100 million a year. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And then that money is distributed as news organizations. So, on the one hand, okay, that's non-dilutive capital that media organizations are getting. At the same time, I'm really annoyed that the Georgia Strait Instagram account, which has 55,000 subscribers, cannot be seen by anyone. Yeah. So it's a trade-off.
Yeah. That's just it. And I wonder a little bit how that impacts reach and maybe in a meaningful way, like if you're hosting events and you don't have the channel to distribute that information to the broader public beyond, say, your subscribers, for example.
Oh, it definitely bottlenecks our top level growth and awareness.
Yeah,
100%.
And I want to sort of circle back a little bit to the sort of independent side and someone that's maybe they're not even seeing themselves as an emerging media brand. Maybe they don't see themselves as a journalist, but they do see themselves as a writer. They see themselves as somebody that wants to get their ideas out there in an intentional way. Like with the Washington Post, you've seen a lot of these journalists who were axed talking about, I'm starting my Substack, this is what I'm doing. And so I'm just wondering where you see that sort of what feels a bit fractured, but also feels like in some ways more human way of connecting media with the right audience.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
No, you're totally right. It is. I like the idea of you've got these veteran reporters, or not even veteran reporters, but new reporters. They're laid off. They're going to start a Substack or a Beehive. Mm-hmm. And you're going to have readers paying you directly for the work that you're doing.
Yeah.
It sounds very like noble and romantic and cool. And to be honest, like that was me. Like I was just an individual who started sending a newsletter out every Sunday, right? And I built an audience, which is really exciting. At the same time, like there's something to be said for like news institutions with multiple layers of editors.
And fact checkers.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Yeah.
There's something to be said for that.
Yeah.
And there's a really good quote. I forget the quote, but I was going to say, basically, it's an Obama quote where he was like, you know what? The internet has brought us closer to all these people with these different perspectives, but it also allows us to narrow our point of view, right? And it's because so-and-so over here could write whatever they want, and they might have a good audience, and it's very niche and specific. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I do think there's value in, like, literally the mainstream media.
Mm-hmm. Right? Yes. I know that's not a cool take.
I know.
But it's a fair one.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. But that being said, I don't know if it's just me and what I'm looking at. How my habits have evolved as a consumer. But I do feel like some of these more community-driven types of publications, so, the Georgia Straight as an example, my impression is that there's kind of a new positive sentiment around some of this stuff. So like I'm older than you, and I worked at a CD store in high school, and we were the place where people could come and get their Georgia Straight, right? Like I remember looking at it, and I was young, and I had my like way cooler counterparts that I worked with that were like, I was the little like Britney Spears girl next to like the Nine Inch Nails guy, like they were cool. They were into culture. I didn't know culture yet. So it was my introduction to culture, I guess. And I recognized that the Georgia Straight served that purpose a little bit. And then I feel like it got quiet, and maybe I just wasn't looking at it. But now I feel like I'm seeing it. I'm seeing the excitement around it. And I'm just wondering if that's just me, or is there something happening in the air where people are getting excited again around things that feel closer to home, but that are fact-driven or intentionally put together?
So I think there's a few things here. One, I'll say Nathan, the editor-in-chief of the Georgia Straight, great editor. He's doing amazing work. So I'll give him that. He's been around for just about a year. But like on a bigger level, just talking about community news media, it's going to sound sort of sad, but the global news is not good, right?
Yeah.
And so sometimes I just want some good news. Right. And you know where I'm going to get it? I'm going to get it in my local newspaper.
That's fair.
Like, honestly, that's like the simple answer I have.
Yeah.
I pay for the New York Times. I read it every day. There's literally nothing good in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, there's no good news.
Yeah. That's a really fair point. So it's not just how technology and media is evolving, but it's really like the current events and the geopolitical landscape.
Trump has only been in power for a year. Not even a year.
Yeah.
Right? It's the 20th, right? I think whatever inauguration is, right? I said to someone last night over drinks, we're at the quarter mark of the gross grind phase of his presidency. You know, when you're doing the grind and you get to the quarter and you're like, holy shit,
what?
we're only a quarter of the way there?
Yeah.
That's where we are right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is hard. And that's part of the reason why I'm wanting to do this show and the publications that come with it there's things going on in the world that just demand airtime. And it is nice to be able to redirect and talk about other conversations that matter. I would love to know, for someone like yourself who's stayed on top of tech evolution, what's happening in the space, not just from like a tooling point of view, but also a market point of view. How do you today stay on top of the trends, what matters, what doesn't matter? Like, how do you educate yourself and know where to focus your time to be on top of, where the market might be going, so you can have thoughtful conversations with investors or founders, for example? Like, how are you navigating that? Because I would think today it's probably harder than ever before with all of the noise.
Yeah, I'd say yes to no, right? The web, AI tools, blessing and a curse, right? There's more voices than there have been ever. At the same time, like, there are tools that help me sort through that stuff, like you said. And so I've always naturally been very, very curious. So I'm lucky, and I talk about this a lot. Like, I'm lucky I'll go to an event. Like, I'm not afraid to be dumb for 10 minutes until I understand something. And so I talk to a lot of people. That's the first thing. And I say people specifically, as in I actually talk to people in the real world. So that's really important.
Yes.
And then I'm on all the same websites as everyone else is on: LinkedIn, Twitter, etc., or X. And then the other thing is I have like very specific newsletters I read. But I also have a very specific workflow. Like, I have a ChatGPT project, which is like a collection of chats for people listening, that's specifically around understanding complicated things in the world. And I have a specific chat called 5 sentences. It knows that if I ever drop a link into this chat, it needs to explain it to me in 5 sentences, like I'm 10. So if there's any topic, any article, like, I have a specific workflow for myself where it's like, I'm not sure what this is all about. Drop it there. Oh, okay, like that makes sense. And then the key thing, though, for me personally, is verifying that new understanding with again, a real person. And this, I think, comes up in news organizations where journalists are afraid to use AI because they think it's like unethical. That's really foolish. I'll probably get in trouble for saying that, right? But these tools are here, right? So you take something like quantum computing and you don't understand like what it is, you understand how to describe it. Get AI to explain it to you like you're 5 years old. And then don't like put that in an article. No, the key thing is then to take that new understanding and talk to an expert and say, hey, if I explain it like this, would this be like a fair representation of what this subject or topic is? And then it's re-verified. And then maybe you use it like that. And so I do that a lot personally. And I think more people should like take that approach.
I really like that. And I do think sometimes we overcomplicate some of this technology and there's such simple ways to use it. I'm going to clip that. That's going to be a clip. I want to be able to quickly touch on anything else that you're working on right now. I know you've got your blog. I know you're, visiting different restaurants and talking about food. Like, what are you, besides the things we've already discussed, what are you most excited about right now?
I feel like we've talked about, like, I'm lucky that you brought me on this show because we've got to talk about the things that I'm excited about. I'm obsessed with this idea of just like bringing more people into the real world and building communities to the extent that I think I want to build a business just on helping businesses, service providers, or brands build real life communities, like audiences that they own, but it's not a newsletter necessarily. It's you're putting people in the room and we're helping you build a community and a connection that you then own. And, maybe these people are already customers. Maybe they become customers. Maybe they become advocates. I'm super, super bullish on that. And in my spare time, I want to do more work on that.
Oh, I'm going to have to talk to you over the next year to see where that goes. Because I have a lot of questions that just emerged, but we don't have time. So I'll get into the weeds with you as you're moving along with that. William, this has been really fun. I want to do it again. I want to be able to come to more of your events. It's been hard for me to like get out in the real world, but it's so meaningful. And I definitely agree with you that that's where people should probably be spending their time and attention. So thank you for sharing that. I will say before we go, where can people find you? What's the best place for people to connect with you or see what you're working on?
Best place is probably just my LinkedIn. So go to LinkedIn, search William Johnson. I'll pop up and yeah.
I'll have it in the show notes and I'll link as we go along any new fun things you work on, including if you ever do your own podcast. I'll make sure to go back.
Awesome. Appreciate that.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning into Canada Now. If you're listening on audio, please remember to subscribe and review the show. If you're liking it, share it with a friend and check us out on YouTube if you are not currently watching. Also subscribe there. It really helps. I think we're going to be starting to post segments of episodes. So watch for new playlists if you want to get these in like 15, 20-minute bites. All right, everybody. Take care. Have a good day.